I don't know. I almost don't know where to start with the situation that people are facing in the NHS, both staff and patients, because that connection between the two is inevitably a key part of how well people are able to be treated or not. I noticed over the weekend, in fact, over the whole of the Christmas and New Year week, I've noticed a lot of activity on social media. NHS workers, people whose family members are in hospital. It's not just in hospitals, but the sharp end at the moment is hospitals for sure. Just awful, awful descriptions of what people are facing. And I was sent a tweet, or included in a tweet earlier on, from Bex, an emergency medical doctor, who includes some, what she describes rightly, I think, as harrowing words from a senior emergency medicine doctor at what he and his colleagues are facing. I won't read the whole thing because it's quite long, but I'll read what I think are the key passages that give us a sense of all of those messages we've been seeing. I've certainly been seeing on social media for the past week or so, and even before Christmas. It says, I'm an emergency department reg with 9 years experience in emergency department, both here and overseas. This morning was the first time ever that I cried in my car after a shift. Where 5 years ago we had 50 patients in the department on handover at night, we now have 180. It used to be around 20 patients to see with a 1 to 2 hour wait for a clinician. It's now 60 to 70 patients waiting for 10 hours. People used to lose their minds if patients were coming up to a 4-hour breach of waiting times. Last night, 60% of the patients in the emergency department had been there for more than 12 hours, some for more than 40 hours. Many I saw the night before, still in the same place when I came in. Now, when those waiting times grow and grow and grow, human suffering grows and grows and grows, and deaths happen that wouldn't happen had the wait not happened. Those are my words. That last couple of sentences, those are my words, not his. But he goes on to describe some of those instances. He says, 87-year-olds coming in after falls, sitting on chairs for 18 hours. I'm going to read that line again. 87-year-olds coming in after falls, sitting on chairs for 18 hours. Other elderly patients lying in their own urine for hours because there's no staff or even a room to change them into something dry. As the reg in charge of the shift, he says, I've had to help the sole nurse in the area change patients by holding a sheet around the bed because we have to do it in the middle of a corridor. Picture this as I say it, because I think what we're hearing here is, think of the reports you've seen over the years on the 10 o'clock news, 9 o'clock news, 10 o'clock news, whenever it used to be on the television. I'm talking way back, the last 30, 40 years. Scenes like this are scenes from countries that don't have a health service to speak of. They're scenes of hospitals when a terror attack has happened and multiple casualties have descended upon them. They're scenes of a war, really. They're not scenes of just a Sunday, a New Year's Day. They're not those scenes, and yet they are, because people who we can trust are telling us that they are. People lying on the floor because there are no chairs left, trolleys parked literally wherever we can put them. I saw a tweet the other day from a woman whose 92-year-old mother was lying on the floor of a hospital. 92 years of age. Can you imagine the distress of the woman, her daughter who sent the tweet, and the staff who were incapable of doing any better for her in that instance? What do? Do they take her to the imaginary bed that doesn't exist? Do they ask her to share a trolley with another patient? Do they send her back to the ambulance that's just run off after being there for 12 hours with her in it? What do they do? What do they do? What do they do? And then it goes on to talk about people dying in the emergency department because they've been there for 2 to 3 days and haven't been assessed properly. I mean, I could go on. That's just the example from one emergency department doctor of almost a decade's experience. And I know from my own experience with my mum, about 7 or 8 weeks before she died, we did have to take her to hospital. We were advised by her GP who came to the house to take her to hospital. And we did. And she had had a heavy fall and thankfully hadn't broken anything. But falls at the age of 90 can finish you off. And she was in her wheelchair in the emergency department. I was with her for about 6 hours before, initial triage, yes, and then nothing. And she was getting increasingly distressed. And I remember just thinking, I'm taking this woman home. I'm not sitting here any longer. And I didn't sit there any longer. I took her home. And I just said, we can't. And I know you're up against it. I know you can't do this any faster. I get it. But I'm choosing not to stay in this hellhole with my mother, who's getting increasingly distressed and begging me to take her home. So those are the moments that people are facing every single second in our NHS at the moment. And my question is, where is our rage about this? Where is our rage? And what is the answer? We'll talk to Sean Linton, the health editor at the Sunday Times, after 1:30, to pull back from the emergency department and look at some of the wider questions that face the NHS and face all of us about where our resources need to be and how we take this dreadful pressure off hospitals.